Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to convert to string. We are also going to truncate a value. So I'm going to introduce another data type called double, and we're going to try and convert that into an integer. An integer is a whole number, and in the process of converting it, it will be truncated. Okay, I've got Visual Studio open, and this is where we left off in our previous lectures. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment out this code by doing 2 slashes and comment out that as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create new variables. I'm going to create a variable, and the data type will be double, and I'll give it a value of k. I'll set the value to 3.5, semicolon at the end. Next, I'll reintroduce variable I and set this value to, I'm going to pass it an integer value. I'll set that value to be an integer of k. So basically what it will do, it will convert this k here value into an integer. An integer is a whole number, and in the process of doing that, it will truncate. Truncate means because integer cannot read decimals, so it will just leave the 0.5 out and only display the 3. So that's what truncating means. So next, we're going to introduce our result label. Remember, we created a result label .text, so it takes in a text value. So we're going to eventually make this convert this value as well. I'll now set this to equals to the variable I. As you can see, there's a red squiggly thing underneath because it's complaining that that local variable is an integer. We cannot implicitly convert the type int to a string. Right, we can using a helper method called toString. So we're going to use a helper method to do the conversion, so we can make it recognize an integer. And the way we do this, where we've got the I, we just get rid of the semicolon and a dot. That would give us some intelligence points. So this is what we want. We want to convert it to string. We do to string and place the semicolon there. All right, so if I save that and execute this code, it should output 3. It will truncate the 0.5. All right, so that's what this is. So let me run that. I'll click on run. So if I click OK, it should output 3. As you can see, it's outputted 3, but left out the 0.5. So far, we've been able to convert to string using the toString method. It's called a helper method. Okay, so we're going to expand on the application further. Using the controls we created. So we are going to make it possible for a user to type in a number. Remember, we created a text box, but we're going to configure it in such a way that a user can type in a number and we can perform calculation based on that number and then display the result. Okay, all right, so we will need to perform at least 2 types of conversion. So what we're going to do, the text box control stores user inputs into a string. So we will want to convert that string into an integer in order to perform a calculation on it. The label control stores result as a string. We will want to convert that result of the integer calculation back into a string. Okay, so I'm going to comment out this line of code here and introduce some other code that we can use with our design controls. Okay, so what we're going to do, we want to make these controls active. So all right, so I'm going to introduce some more different variables here now. To save time, I've already written the code here. So I've got some code here from line 27 to 30. So I've created another a string type and given it the variable value of I, and I've set it to equals to the input text box dot text. I've created another variable called J, which is an integer data type, and I've set the value to equals to int dot pass, and I've passed it the value of I, which is this text box here. What we're doing here, we're converting the string to an integer via the int dot pass helper method. Okay, so the int dot pass helper method, it's a bit different from the toString helper method. All right, we've used that earlier on. It's just that the main difference is that the pass helper method comes from inside of the int class and takes in a string as an input in between the method parentheses. All right, so this I here is referring to this input text value. So with this piece of code here now, the user input will be stored as an integer. All right, in the int j, which is this one there, will be stored as an integer, and we can now perform calculations. All right, and display the result through the label control, which is this one here. All right, so we simply, what we're doing here, we're converting the k to a string. So let's save that and run the code. Okay, so this is the interface. If I type in, because we've done the conversion, so it will not be possible to type in values. If I type in 7 and click OK, it should give me 8 because of the code. There you go, giving me 8. If I type in another value, say type in, say 6, it should give me 7. All right. The reason it's adding an extra number is because of this code here on line 29. So I'm saying the integer k, so any value I type in as a k will give me the value of j plus 1. All right, so this j, the integer here, the pass method is doing the conversion. All right, so anything I type in here as a j, it will add 1 to it. That's where we're getting the extra number from. So if I add 4 there and click OK, it will give me 5. What should happen if I type in a word, Rick? I should get an error and click OK. Notice the Visual Studio has immediately given me an error and it's telling me what's going on there. You can see Visual Studio has highlighted where the problem is, why it failed. So at runtime, it's giving me the exception error. All right, so the problem is that the int.pass method will only work when the string looks exactly like a number. Runtime errors are quite difficult to be caught by the compiler. We've seen the compiler errors before where you see rest quickly bits before you actually compile your code. The runtime errors are much more difficult to catch. And one of the ways to catch them is basically through rigorous testing. And one of the things you could put in place is to perform some checks, some basic checks, to check some validation checks. If a user provides certain input, it will check the format and make sure the input is correct or not. So this kind of validation will help, address the runtime errors. So I'll just stop the code from running by clicking that. So that's it. In this lecture, we successfully converted integer to string, and we also performed a truncation. So that's it for this lecture. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.